Hi, I'm Marty Goldenberg, owner of Mullen Productions and a partner in CSG Technologies. I am happy to welcome you to our first webinar, IT in the Time of COVID-19, which is being hosted jointly with the team from CSGT. Whether you are working from your office or from your home, we believe IT can help you and your team work more efficiently and effectively during this time of uncertainty. As many of you know, Mullen is a live event design and technical direction company. For 30 years, Team Mullen has worked with major brands creating engaging experiences using the latest technologies. Because of our work in an industry that relies on continually evolving technologies, it made sense to me to move into the world of IT. Now more than ever, the two worlds merge, doing virtual meetings and webcasts and figuring out the best way to use technology to help your clients and employees get the job done. We are here to introduce to you what is available in the marketplace and how it might work for you. Calling on trusted partners you already have in place, you can rely on us as your guide. Now let me introduce to you the operating partner and president of CSGT, Matt Parks.
Hi, Marty. Thanks for the introduction and thanks for the opportunity to get to talk with you about IT in the world of COVID-19. And I can say personally, the last 6 weeks in the world of IT services has been a wild ride. We've spent a number of hours counseling our clients on how to move from a 100% virtual work environment in an extremely short order of time. In many cases, as short as a weekend. And as we work with them to helping to architect, implement, and manage a new 100% virtual work environment, we always get asked, what is the best environment? What is the best design for me? And frankly, that answer is going to depend. It's going to depend upon the type of industry you're in. It's going to depend the size of your company, and it's going to depend upon your role within that organization. So for instance, if you're in an architectural engineering or design firm where you have a large number of knowledge workers working on very high powered machines, working on extremely large files that are located in a centralized server bank, that's going to be one architecture. If you contrast that against what you would deal with an an accounting or a law firm where you may not need that extreme computing power at the workstation level, but you have a large number of documents where you're trying to manage version control and keep track of statuses and understand how to search across that bank of information. Contrast that further against a small manufacturer or a warehouser, where you have a large number of assets, you have a large amount of inventory, and you're trying to manage that while it's all moving at speed over large distances. Each one of those is going to necessitate a different architecture, a different design. Now, invariably, as we go through this process, we get asked the same question regardless of industry, and we thought it would be a good topic just to start off with our webinar series on, which is Teams versus Zoom. Which one is better? How do I use each? When is it appropriate? And to help kind of walk us through that, I wanted to bring in one of our technical experts, Zach Hardy. He's a project manager, and he has some thoughts on how you might navigate those questions.
Thanks for the introduction, Matt. You're absolutely right. In this time of COVID-19 and work from home, video conferencing and other telepresence solutions have become vital to a functioning workspace. And frequently we are asked by customers, Teams versus Zoom, which is most appropriate for my needs. And while we will explore both of those products in depth, or at least to some extent in depth, what we found overall is that they have different advantages. Some organizations may opt for one over the other. However, we frequently find that actually a mix of the two is ideal, just in different balances pertaining to how your organization is structured and what your needs are. So we do actually have some graphics here to present that go over the 3 biggest strengths and weaknesses of each of those products. So for Zoom, what we find is one of its primary strengths is external collaboration. It does a great job of being able to be accessible to people who are, even those who aren't particularly tech savvy, by virtue of having a phone number to dial into, as well as just in general being very easy to set up for people outside of your organization. So not only is it easy to join as a participant, it's also easy to set up meetings and generate the invites themselves. We also find that Zoom has a very intuitive and very polished user interface. It has a lot of functions, including a wonderful display mode where everyone on the meeting can see everyone else with their cameras live in real time. That's particularly helpful for something like a staff meeting or all hands for a specific department, where it's good to be collaborative, and that sense of being able to see one another helps to bridge the distance. It does have some disadvantages, however, some weaknesses. Now, one of those that we have for Zoom is cost. So Zoom is licensed on what's considered to be a per host model. And what they consider a host is a person who is able to create meeting invitations. So that typically starts at around $13.50, if memory serves, per person who needs to be able to create those invitations. So that can get a little bit pricey if you're equipping a large number of staff with this. What we've seen is some companies will, in order to defray that cost, limit the people who have that Zoom host license to be managers or salespeople, something like that. And then the majority of employees simply join rather than having their own paid for account. Zoom does also have some significant security issues. They've been hit pretty hard in the news recently for a good number of those. And they have made some significant strides to help close some of those problems. However, they are an intrinsically weaker security model and identity model than what you find in Microsoft Teams. They do also pass some amount of their traffic through mainland China, which if you work for a government agency or government contractor, or just if you have sensitive knowledge pertaining to maybe how you manufacture something or a dedicated process within your business, that's something that can be a non-starter for this product right there, because there is the risk of the PRC snooping some of that data from your video conferences. There's also no integrated file sharing within Zoom. Basically, it's a very useful tool for having the meeting itself, but it does not do a good job of helping move data around before the meeting, and it doesn't have any sort of persistence. So it requires you to take any notes or anything like that outside of the Zoom program itself. I think that brings us nicely to Teams and some of the advantages that we find for that. So primarily for Teams, first and foremost, we consider its cost to be an advantage. So Teams is included with every Office 365 subscription. I think Microsoft recently rebranded Office 365 as Microsoft 365, so bear with me if my terminology is a little bit outdated by the time you're seeing this. But we consider that a tremendous advantage because Office 365 is a very cost-effective and very robust solution for small and medium businesses. It's really our opinion that unless you're on the competing product from Google, G Suite, that you really should move to Office 365, and that those costs should be attributed elsewhere besides directly to video conferencing. So we therefore consider Teams to be free, and therefore its cost a significant advantage. It also integrates fully with the Microsoft suite. So that means files from OneDrive, SharePoint, OneNote is a great knowledge repository, a good thing to take meeting minutes in, for example. All of that integrates very, very smoothly within Microsoft Teams. It even has integrated previews for things like Excel files and Word documents. There's also a significant, robust control of participation at a very granular level. So what that means is that you can set up different teams where certain individuals have the ability to read and write to the files that are included within that Teams channel, whereas other members could only be able to read those files, only be able to view them. And also you can create multiple threads, multiple teams really, within the Microsoft Teams application. And that way, only the relevant personnel can be included on specific channels. And that helps not only with security, but also helps prevent your employees from being overwhelmed with information that's not important to how they do their job. Teams does have some disadvantages. One of those being that it can be a bit difficult to use. It has a steeper learning curve compared to Zoom. So Zoom is a product that most people will figure out really within an afternoon. Teams has some deeper functionality, and that does mean it takes additional time to figure out, especially if you're doing some of the more sophisticated functions that it allows. Relative to Zoom, it has an immature user interface. So a lot of the polish that's in Zoom is missing from Teams. Teams is a very young program. It's really been only put together within the last couple of years. And it's really been sort of sewn together from other Microsoft products that they're merging together. So I have no doubt that Microsoft will continue to improve this function of Microsoft Teams, and the interface will improve significantly. Microsoft Teams, because it is tied to that Office 365, now Microsoft 365 tenant, does have a complicated initial setup. That's something that we strongly recommend that small and medium businesses refer to an organization like ours, a dedicated IT consulting group, if they don't have their own in-house IT, to make sure that that process goes smoothly. But it is also relatively complex to add and remove external collaborators. So for example, if you have a consultant that you want to have visibility to files for some functional group or a conversation for some functional group, they can be added. And many users are capable of doing that. However, sometimes IT staff are required to make sure that process goes smoothly.
Well, thanks, Zach. That's actually a pretty nice summary of each of the tools there. But let's maybe try and dimensionalize it a little bit more, put it into context. So let's say you're a land use kind of architectural firm with a couple hundred employees. What are some of the ways that some of the best practices that you've seen as far as implementing the Teams tool set?
That's a great question, Matt. And we were able to actually speak from experience on this because we have several customers who operate in that space. What we found is that for certain functional groups, especially administrative groups, they'll set up dedicated Teams channels for those groups. So for example, HR and accounting. Beyond that, in sort of the broader employee group, what they'll do is actually create a team for each project. That's especially because in the architecture and engineering design, especially if it interacts with land use, the projects can last for a significant amount of time. And as that project goes through its life cycle, it'll move within functional groups within the organization itself. And Microsoft Teams is very well suited for this because as the project proceeds from one phase to the next, different team members can be added and removed. However, the knowledge and the conversations that happened regarding that project are preserved for any member who needs to see them. So we find this is very helpful from a knowledge management standpoint.
And I could see how that would allow you to have a greater autonomy and control over sensitive and even proprietary information. And that's probably much more so than you would utilizing Zoom for a lot of those collaboration meetings, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. You can set those permissions exactly as needed. So that way, everyone who needs the file can see it, but people who have no business seeing it don't even know it exists.
Well, excellent, Zach. That's appreciate you taking the time to kind of pull together that summary. And you know, Marty, as you can see, there's a lot to consider when just something as straightforward as Teams and Zoom. Lots of things to consider, and you know, we're happy to we just kind of touched on the tip of the iceberg here, and we're looking forward to the next few weeks where we get to touch on a few more topics when it comes to how you work virtually, how you collaborate in a 100% virtual environment in this time of COVID-19. So thank you.
Well, I think that's really wonderful, guys. Thank you all very much for your participation. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you again. Bye.